Smile to Absa, going off the beaten track to find solutions.
Gone are the days when off-road races used to start before dawn. Nowadays, the only people who have to get up before dawn are television cameramen who have instructions to get sunrise shots. Good news for competitors was that a brisk wind had blown up overnight, and this would help with the dust problem. There was also overnight rain in some areas, with all the signs pointing towards a dramatic race.
After a disappointing prologue, former champion Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau would start 11th on the road and had some hard work ahead of them.
Yes, yesterday we lost about a minute and a half in the prologue. It was a steep downhill and hairpin right, and I braked a bit too late, so I tipped the car over the hairpin and we couldn't get the car out. About a minute and a half it took us. Eventually we got the car out, so we lost that time. Today we'll see, we'll try and make it up.
The Donaldson-Nissen crew of Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford were the first crew to be flagged away at the start. Behind them, cars took off at gaps determined by their finish positions on the day one prologue. There was a time when cars were flagged off after 2-minute dust gaps, and races were decided on corrected time. Those days, like the pre-dawn starts, are also a thing of the past. Race organisers have been asked by the Motorsport SA Off-Road Car Racing Commission to make routes a little more technical this year. The organisers of the Eastern Cape 400, the Algoa Motorsport Club, followed instructions, but it was clear right from the start that the pace was going to be relentless.
The move towards more technical routes had been motivated by safety concerns. The latest technology and space-age components have seen cars in both the production and special vehicle categories simply get quicker and quicker. There's also a prevailing school of thought that off-road racing is not all about speed, and that races should also be a test of durability and stamina on the part of both man and machinery.
Out on the route, Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford had run into problems, and Colin Matthews and Alan Smith were running at the front of the field in the Century Racing Bat. They had Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman right on their heels with the Motorite Revo 1 4x4 crew looking to apply as much pressure as was possible and force a mistake out of Matthews and Smith.
Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford were forced to stop when a stone severed a brake pipe, and Hicho and Jaap de Bruin took over the production vehicle lead in the Micra XL Toyota Hilux. Hannes Grobler and Johan Moore had made up 30 seconds on Hein Latergan and Chris Birkin and were now running in second place. Grobler relishes the challenge of chasing down cars ahead of him and was on a charge. Latergan, in only his second off-road race, was also going along steadily enough, and when Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford managed to get going again, they had dropped to 25th on the road.
Behind the Latergan Birkin Castrol Toyota, there was a high-speed train led by reigning SA champions Cully and Quinton Sulwald in the Sulwald Racing Bat. Hot on their heels were Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the RFS Toyota, and they had Will Battershill and Reg Sutton in their mirrors. Battershill and Sutton were nearly 2 minutes behind the leading car and were being chased by Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux, who looked menacing in their SP Class debut. Behind them, Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau were pushing hard in the Total Porter, and they had Ivar Tollefson and Quinn Evans in close attendance in the third of the factory Donaldson-Nissen Navaras.
Further back in the field, Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell were going along steadily in the Gibson Racing Bat and were keeping ahead of the Rapsa Bat in the hands of Nardus Alberts and Jeff Minott. On a tight route, overtaking was a tricky business and more often than not needed the cooperation of the other crew. Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson picked up a place in the Regent Racing Bat when John Moore and Leander Pienaar kindly moved over.
Whitehouse spent a couple of seasons co-driving alongside former SA champion Terence Marsh and is now in his second season as a driver. The pair got past Moore and Pienaar easily enough and were closing in on Nardus Alberts and Jeff Minott in the Rapsa car. Alberts and Minott had been around the block once or twice, and getting past them was going to be a different kettle of fish. Not only that, but being right behind a Class A car when it throws up stones and rocks can be a nasty experience.
The hapless John Moore and Leander Pienaar were coming under attack from all directions. Next to force their way past the Lesotho pair were Class P leaders Don Thompson and Don Blakey in the Zarko. A good battle was in the offing between Thompson Blakey and Jan and Hendrik Kraai in the Keymax Bat. Right on their heels were George and Sharon Barkhuizen in the AIM Toyota Hilux, and they had an ailing Chris de Plooy suffering the after effects of a bout of tick bite fever, and Henk van Vieren chasing after them in the RFS Toyota Hilux. Also in this little gaggle of cars were Kobus van Tonda and Rian Guapa in the Unifreight Ford Ranger, and newcomers Jimmy Zahus and Stefan Kutsia in the nicely turned out Mountain Dew Porter. Behind them, Limpopo crew Naeem Mosaji and Mohammed Molston were battling an engine misfire in the Tyrak Porter, and an overshoot did nothing for their cause.
SP Class rookie Thomas Rundle was going along nicely in the factory Ford Ranger and had the benefit of the vastly experienced Henny Testiger alongside him. The Ford was being chased by brothers David and Gary White in the Ruacon Racing Bat, with the pair looking to close in on the Class P leaders. Also trying to move up through the field were former SA champions Neil Woolridge and Kenny Shorthammer in the new turbo diesel Ford Ranger, which was proving to be a little recalcitrant.
Woolridge and Shorthammer both raced motorcycles with considerable success, including Roof of Africa wins before turning to four wheels. Racing is in the Woolridge blood, with Neil's two sons showing plenty of promise at regional level.
Holding station behind the Ford were Herman Sulwald and son Bichard in the Sulwald Racing Zarko. Also holding station were Graham Leith and Mike Lawrenson, who these days campaign the Ford Ranger, previously in the hands of off-road legend Alfie Cox and Henny Testiger. Leith and Lawrenson were going along steadily enough, but were being closed down by Nick and Ryan Harper in the Atlas Copco Bat. The Harpers lost 10 minutes on the prologue with a fan belt problem, but had made up 3 places. Back on the road and carving their way through the field were Duncan Force and Rolf Pitchford, who weren't taking any prisoners. There was a close fight going on between Class P contenders Johan and Etienne Besadenhout and Johan van Staden and James Rousseau. And behind them, the battle for the lead in Class E had reached a climax. Dion Venter and Ian Palmer were trying to find a way around Louw de Bruin and Rian Greling, with the Ruacon Ford crew having nothing of it.
There were problems for veteran road racer Bodo Berthold and Philip Herschelman when they beached the Atlas Copco Bat running in Class P.
When Kutsia Labuschagne and Johan Gaber arrived on the scene, the Atlas Copco was blocking the road. Labuschagne, who modestly admits to playing a few games of rugby for the Blue Bulls in days gone by, had to take a slight detour. Labuschagne and Gaber, who are business partners, have been racing together for more than 20 years and were looking to bounce back from a disappointing Adenko 400 when a blown engine halted their race.
The unfortunate Berthold and Herschelman were struggling to get the Atlas Copco car mobile again, but were not the only ones with problems. Gewald van Breda and Johan de Tooy were stuck in a gully in the Northam Toyota Hilux, and a line of cars had formed behind them. A friendly farmer with a tractor helped extricate the Toyota, with van Breda and de Tooy losing time in the Class D battle.
With Van Breda and de Tooy out of the way, the other cars could get going again. First in line were reigning Class E champions Jannie Visser and Jorx Leroux in the RFS Toyota. No problem for them. And Picky Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus also had no problems in the second 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. The father and son pair of Glenn and Rob Gibson were running steadily in the Gibson Racing Adenko, with Bapi Rubeluza and Kulili Vakaliza also having a good run in the factory Ford Ranger.
And now a trip down memory lane. belting along in an ancient race car were Lesotho crew Keith Totoy and veteran co-driver Ashley Thorne. Behind the race car Edenko 400 class winners, Cliff and Louis Weichelt were in a more modern Toyota Hilux, and after prologue problems were looking to close in on the Class D cars ahead of them. There was no further forward progress for Bodo Berthold and Philip Hurselman, who was still firmly beached, with John Telford and Jaco Swart looking for a way around them. Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton were on a charge in the factory Castrol Toyota and were closing in on the Micra Excel Toyota of off-road newcomers Henny Strumpe and Jan Hendrik van der Linde.
The intrepid Grant Watkins was battling along in the Gecko Special and having to combine driving with navigating. Behind Watkins, the Atlas Copco Bat of Bodo Berthold and Philip Hurselman was mobile again, but progress was sometimes a little erratic, and the pair gave the marshal at a checkpoint a bit of a scare.
Berthold and Hurselman left a little debris behind them, but a helpful spectator was on hand to do a little housework. The track was clear when Richard Schilling and Chris Davies appeared on the scene, but the marshal was still a little on the nervous side.
After breaking a shock absorber on the prologue, Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzo were pushing hard in the Century Racing 4x4. Another broken shock absorber would put them out of the running. And also in the wars were Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara. Major suspension and drivetrain damage on the prologue saw them start at the back of the field, with the pair destined for retirement in what would be Groenewald's second non-finish in more than 2 years of racing. Cape crew Derek Dutoy and Ian Palmer also started from the back of the field in the Orange Tree Bat, and were also headed for retirement along with the track and kart star Leroy Poulter and Rob Howie in the Ferodo Nissan Hardbody.
Vehicle and asset finance from ABSA, overcoming all